Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Coach the Coach Radio. Brought to you by the Business RadioX Ambassador Program, the no-cost business development strategy for coaches who want to spend more time serving local business clients and less time selling them. Go to brxambassador.com to learn more. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Coach the Coach Radio, and this is going to be a good one. Today on the show, we have Gary Decker, and he is with Win Moves Coaching. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Lee. So glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us a little bit about Win Moves Coaching. How you serving folks?
So my focus as a leadership coach is helping good leaders be great. We all have challenges, we all have opportunities, and I just help people sort through that and find their vision and their mission and their purpose.
Now, what's your backstory? How'd you get involved in leadership coaching?
So I have a long corporate career. I have more than 35 years in leading and developing teams all around the world in a variety of functions. I started my career in finance. I was a CPA at one point in my career. I then moved on to leadership roles in IT and in HR. And I've really worked to, as I said, develop teams and leaders all across a whole variety of functions and locations and geographies. So I've been coaching. It's been part of my life and my DNA for that entire time, from my first days in public accounting. Over time, I got involved with some organizations that do certifications and do training, and I ultimately got my professional certification in coaching, and then went into it full time. I dabbled part time and had side hustle going on in coaching for a long time, but I went full time into my business in early 2020.
Now, can we talk a little bit about how when you were a CPA?
Yeah.
So obviously you were, as a young person, saying, I'm going to be a CPA at some point, and you were going to choose that path. What attracted you to that? And then at what point did you say, you know what, I think there's more to me than this, and I'm going to kind of branch out a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I went into public accounting because I knew that it would expose me to a wide variety of clients and give me exposure to business and professionals that I didn't have as a young person. And it's exactly what happened. I had major clients. Each quarter of the year, I had a different major client and a variety of industries, all kinds of things. I'm a continuous learner, have been since day one, and I just love that exposure. And when I realized that coaching was for me, was literally the first week of public accounting, when they sat down and said, okay, well, this is our counseling process. We evaluate you after each job that you do. You have a discussion with your supervisor, and then it goes up the chain, so to speak, and we give you feedback. And then I got to do that with people that were assigned to me as a leader on different engagements. And it just really resonated to me, the ability to get feedback, to act on feedback, to give feedback, and to help people develop and grow. And I've just taken that in every role that I've had ever since.
And then you've been able to kind of expand the breadth of your knowledge so you can serve people in a variety of roles, not just finance and accounting?
Absolutely. When I went into leadership in the IT organization, we were in the midst of rolling out major system projects all over the world. So we were putting together teams, a very intensive effort of evaluating talent, internal talent, consultative talent, and assessing them. And we had to build a very flexible environment to do that. So that's where I created a career coaching council in my organization at the time. And that's when the coaching, that I got exposed to the coaching certification programs, and it really took off. And I got I replaced some of my letters, if you will, with new coaching certification letters.
And I would think, just from a foundational standpoint, having that finance background really helps you in no matter what area you're helping a client with, because it always goes back to the numbers at some point.
Absolutely. It's the foundation of everything. And to be able to talk with a leader now and have that basic understanding of really all components of their business, it's really, really helpful.
Now, what are you seeing in the marketplace? You're hearing a lot about this period of time we're in with this transition out of the pandemic, hopefully as soon as possible. And there's this great, I think they're calling it the great resignation happening. A lot of people are reevaluating their priorities, changing careers, or just pulling the ripcord and just saying, look, I'm going to hit pause and I'm going to just regroup here a little bit. Are you seeing that? Is that accurate in the markets you're dealing with? And how are the leaders kind of handling this if it's true, this kind of great resignation?
Yeah, or great reshuffle. There's a few buzzwords out there about it. It's definitely happening. I see it a lot. And I guess what I'd say is good leaders that I see, or leaders that are effective, I shouldn't say good or bad, but leaders that are effective are listening to their people and really, really trying to get input and feedback and adapt and find new models of working, find ways to give feedback to people in a more effective way. I think employees, from my experience, what I'm seeing is that most people that are leaving a job or a company are doing so because they're not feeling connected. They're not feeling heard. So the leaders that are less effective are unfortunately kind of holding on to the old way and waiting for it to come back. I've actually even heard leaders say things like, well, once the assistance money runs out and people really need a job, they'll come running back. And I find that an interesting approach for a leader to want to be hiring desperate employees.
Right. That speaks to their culture, I would think.
I think so too. I think it speaks to a lot. Leaders are really being challenged in this time to think about how they can influence and give feedback to employees in a way that's not, foundationed on FaceTime and control and things like that. So it's definitely a time of everybody's learning this new dance, so to speak.
And, there's a saying that people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. Are you seeing this kind of at the heart of that as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm seeing the opposite. I talk to leaders and ask them about this kind of thing and the impact. I've gone to different organizations and you look around and there's like no impact. Their people are running around doing their jobs, happy to do their jobs. Those were the people that were like that before anything changed. Those were people that were sensitive and empathetic to their employees before anyone heard the word pandemic. So it's without a doubt, it's that type of leader that is continuing to be successful.
It's one of those moments, I guess, in time where, where they say when the tide goes down, then you can see who's wearing their bathing suit or not. This is a time where you're seeing whose company culture and their people are really kind of practicing what they preach when they say their people are the most important asset. I mean, the numbers are the numbers. If a bunch of people in your firm are quitting or have had enough, that might speak to what's going on kind of as part of the culture of your organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. That great Warren Buffett quote, you don't know who's skinny dipping until the tide goes out. And without a doubt, that's happening and you see it. And some leaders are having a real hard time identifying that and valuing that. So I love working with those kinds of leaders and helping them broaden their vision and think through some more flexible approaches.
So now let's talk about the leader. Like, say something has occurred. All of a sudden, the turnover is extremely high. All of a sudden, they're seeing a lot of turnover where maybe historically, for whatever reason, they hadn't been seeing this degree. Maybe there were symptoms, but maybe not to the degree that it is today. What is some advice you can give that leader to say, hey, we're going to have to triage this right now, but here, you're going to have to kind of lay some foundational groundwork in order to really get through this?
Yeah. Well, one of the key things as a coach, I don't typically give advice, so to speak, unless, the door is open. And we do coaching where I will try to pull out from that person what it is that they see and what they see as opportunities. And sometimes I see many leaders will kind of knee jerk to, oh, I guess I have to pay more money. And yeah, that's part of it. There's a competitive component in compensation. But I'll try and ask them and get them to think through, are there other things that maybe would be valuable to people? Things I've seen, creativity around the hours that they're asking people to work, sharing roles in some cases where that might work, thinking about other ways to provide development opportunities for employees. But I really try to get the leaders to kind of think that through themselves. If they're stuck in, there's nothing I can do, and I've seen this as well. There are organizations that just can't hack it.
And then, but so, I mean, obviously they're going to kind of self-author their destiny, but you're going to be kind of hopefully opening their mind and maybe asking questions that open their mind to have them go down some productive path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Try and, I work a lot with people's mindset and why are they stuck with that feeling? And, sometimes there's a bad past experience that there's no guarantee that that's going to happen again, or there's a judgment that they're kind of putting on top of their employees. And again, with empathy is a big part of this. And we learned a lot in the depths of, like, when people in many companies had the opportunity to work remote and we all literally saw into each other's living rooms and saw what was going on in people's lives, we had the chance to be more empathetic. And when leaders can adapt to that and take that on and really seek the ways that their employees want to be and have flexibility, that's where it pays off.
Now, are you seeing this remote work? Obviously there was a need for it to be, okay, this is how it is now. This is the new reality that we're living in. And now as the pandemic is kind of waning a little bit and people are getting more comfortable of being face-to-face again, all of that, I trust my employees to be remote, everything's great as a remote, is now kind of morphing into some hybrid version of remote because the workers obviously love remote. The leaders may not love remote as much or feel like ultimately that's the way to go. So now they're kind of trying to have it both ways. How are you seeing that kind of evolve as we get through this pandemic?
Yeah, I think for the most part, and there's always exceptions, but for the most part, employers that are not allowing some kind of flexibility are struggling to find people, or will continue to struggle to keep people. Most of the people that I interact with want some version of flexibility. And they're frustrated by the fact that we proved that it could work. We proved that most organizations were more profitable, more efficient in their operations. People were unshackled from having to commute and to, do their hair fancy or whatever you want to say. People felt a lot of freedom and flexibility from that. And they're demanding that in the large part. And leaders, again, to my view and my experience, effective leaders are adjusting to that.
Now, do you
others, I think there are some pride issues and some other non-organizational matters that come into play.
Now, one of the benefits of remote workforce was that your workforce can be anywhere. Right. Once you switch to some sort of a hybrid where you have to come into the office some of the time, you can't be anywhere anymore. Like you can't have an employee 1,000 miles away and then popping in on a Friday meeting on a weekly. I guess you could, but I mean, I don't know how sustainable that is over time. But are you seeing that by saying that it's hybrid, you're basically saying that you're not, then the world's not your oyster when it comes to talent anymore. It's still localized.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly right. And I know some employees and some organizations struggle because of folks that moved away or came up with some alternative arrangement. And now they're stuck with the decision, do I let them stay that way or do I force them back? And again, that's not a one size fits all answer either. And the leaders that I speak with, I ask them outright, well, what would be the downside of letting them stay where they are? And sometimes there's an answer that makes sense. Oftentimes there's not.
And then, so this is kind of a case-by-case basis for every organization, right? They're going to just have to figure this out in the best way that they can. I mean,
absolutely.
And it's going to be interesting from the employee standpoint. I mean, and this probably contributes to this great reshuffling or resignation, is the fact that, hey, I like living in my hometown with my immediate family and just being remote and getting my job done rather than living in this high-priced city that I'm struggling and barely making it. And so my quality of life is not as great. So why can't I have it both ways? And each organization is going to have to answer that question.
Yeah. And it's not just like, by the way, it's not just like, oh, this is cool. It's usually because they're getting help with childcare,
right?
Or they're helping take care of an elderly parent
sure,
or sibling, or, there's people found, that's, I don't know, maybe dare I say one of the upsides of pandemic is we all found out what's important for us to care for.
Right. And so now, are you seeing any trends of how this is going to play out, or is this literally a case-by-case basis and every organization is going to just kind of navigate it the way that works for that organization, for good or for bad?
Well, I think the trend is, it's a bit case-by-case. From what I'm seeing is there's without a doubt more of a general push to get back to in person as much as possible. There is, there's still questions out there. There's still, the vaccine for young people is just starting. So I think there's a lot of still some hesitancy to push real hard on it. And a couple of organizations, I don't personally work with any, but a couple I've read about forced everybody back and then said, they pulled back from that. So I think we're still very much in a transition, and maybe through this winter, that's going to continue. But it's going to be interesting. I talk about what's new in 2022. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I really do think, from what I'm seeing, is the war for the best talent is going to require people to allow some version of flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that so many people were willing to quit with nothing as a backup plan just shows you how important this is. They're not compromising when it comes to this quality of life that they were enjoying for so long.
Absolutely. And again, as I said earlier, they need to. The childcare question is huge. The pressures on the childcare industry to staff and be ready for this are there's a lot of challenges there as well. So there's not a foundation for folks that they can rely on like there was previously.
Now, when you're working with a firm, is there a typical point of entry? Like, are they asking you to come in to solve some kind of urgent thing right away and then that expands, or is it kind of can come from anywhere, the way that an organization engages with you?
Yeah. So typically, as I described, my ideal client is someone or an organization, either a person or an organization that knows they have a particular challenge, and they come to me and we talk about it and we develop a plan of action around that challenge. It's communication or leadership or something like that, talent. But my favorite is working with folks that don't kind of sense they have any challenge, and we discover together that there are things there that they don't necessarily have addressed, or we start in one direction and uncover, very common to uncover that there's something else that we need to talk about.
And then the way you deliver your services, is it primarily one-on-one, or is it group coaching? You do workshops?
It's all of the above. It's primarily one-on-one, but I also do workshops and group work as well.
And then it's industry agnostic because of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. I market myself as a leadership coach, to be quite honest. And, it's a little secret. Don't tell anybody, but really anyone's a leader, someone who has a direction that they want to go in and wants to get there. So I work with folks in all kinds of backgrounds and all kinds of situations.
Now, is it primarily senior leaderships, or are you seeing some organizations kind of have this coaching trickle down to middle management and below?
Good ones do. I mean, it's the good organizations are seeing that, in all honesty, we all could use a coach. I have a coach. We all could benefit. The best athletes in sports all have multiple coaches, right? We all can benefit from somebody outside of our day-to-day that can help us see something we don't see and improve upon it. So good organizations are offering, I've worked with some organizations that offer this as a perk to their employees. One of the challenges there is that sometimes the leaders have a kind of a vested interest or a thought how they want to apply that. That's not how it works. If it's really a benefit or a perk, the employee is going to get the benefit that the employee wants to get, not at the direction of the leader.
And sometimes that coaching is going to reveal maybe this isn't a good fit for the employee.
Absolutely.
So that's part of the unintended consequence of that.
Yeah, no, that gets a little tricky sometimes, but yes.
Well, ultimately that is good for the organization because you want best fit, just like you want best fit clients, you want best fit employees.
Absolutely. It's funny. I always practice that as a leader in my corporate work when, other managers would be like, oh no, I think Susie's out looking for another job. I would approach that differently. I would say, well, I think that's probably good because at the end of the day, and I had this at various points in my career where I had opportunities, I had to look side by side at what I'm doing now versus what I could be doing. And I want people that are sitting in my organization that want to be there, right? And so to your point, if they don't want to for whatever reason, I'm going to help them get to where they want to go.
Right. That's your job. I mean,
and it's healthy,
right.
It's not good for the organization if they're in the wrong place.
Right. And it's an interesting time. Well, congratulations on all the success. If there's an organization out there that wants to learn more about your practice or get on your calendar, is there a website?
Absolutely. winmovescoaching.com, winmovescoaching.com, and just contact me there and I'd be more than happy. I always do free consultation and it doesn't make sense to go anywhere unless we agree we're a good fit for each other.
Well, Gary, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're doing important work and we appreciate you.
Lee, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and I hope you have a great day.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We'll see you all next time on Coach the Coach Radio.